And at 24/24 every night until the election, we bring you the latest 2024 campaign news in the last 24 hours with a sneak peek ahead to the next 24 hours. First up today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis taking a verbal swing. Nope, not former President Donald Trump this time, but at the current occupant of the White House, President Biden. DeSantis, in unveiling his economic Declaration of Independence in Rochester, New Hampshire, zeroed in on Biden's economic policies and said this.
Our country is in decline right now. We see it with military decline, cultural decline, but we also see it in terms of economic decline. And I'm running for president because we cannot be satisfied with simply managing this decline a little bit better than the Democrats. I'm running for president because we need to reverse the decline of this country and restore our country to the greatness that it deserves. And that begins by restoring an American economy that actually works for American families again.
And while I'm on the topic of Biden's economic policies, yesterday CBS News released a new poll, and it's dismal for the president. Biden's approval rating has hit an all-time low of 40%, and it gets bleaker for the president. Biden's approval rating on the economy has slid back down to 34%, where it previously sat in June of 2022. But of course, never forget, polls are merely snapshots at the moment. Much can happen between now and Election Day. Next up, yesterday, former South Carolina governor, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley on CBS was asked a very popular but very uncomfortable question for most Republican 2024 hopefuls. Here it is. If she's elected president, and if former President Donald Trump is convicted of any federal charges, would she pardon the former president? Here's what she said.
I mean, I think that one of the things we have to look at is not what's in the best interest of, the president, but what's in the best interest of the country. We have to move forward. We've got to quit living in the past. And I don't want there to be all of this division over the fact that we have a president serving years in jail over a documents trial. I want all of this to go away. It's why we have to have a new generational leader. It's why we need to move forward. We can't keep living with indictments and court cases and vengeance of the past.
Well, that sounds like a yes, but it sure took a lot of words to get there, didn't it? Moving on. Yesterday, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie on CNN talking about what appears to be one of his favorite topics, former President Donald Trump's mounting legal battles. Here's what presidential candidate Christie said.
I want voters to listen to this. It is most likely that by the time we get on the debate stage on August 23rd, the frontrunner will be out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions: Florida, Washington, Georgia, and New York. Out on bail, Casey. I mean, that doesn't even clear the low-class bar that Donald Trump is advocating for. Look, I'm running for president because I want to do the big things. Joe Biden will be the president again if Donald Trump's the nominee.
Next up, yesterday, NBC News asked Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr if he will vote for Trump if Trump wins the Republican nomination. Barr said, according to NBC, I've made clear that I strongly oppose Trump for the nomination and will not endorse Trump. But then NBC also asked Barr how he would vote if the general election is between former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. Barr was apparently not so certain how to answer that one, or else he was not anxious to say. His answer, I'll jump off that bridge when I get to it. Moving on, New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, who is not seeking re-election, opposes former President Donald Trump's 2024 presidential run. Yesterday, Sununu sat down with ABC News to discuss Trump's speech at the Iowa Republican Lincoln dinner on Friday. Here's Governor Sununu.
Trump got a warm reception, but it was without a doubt, and I think anybody in that room would tell you, it was the worst speech. It was the worst 10 minutes. He came out, he read from a binder, he didn't look up, he didn't smile. It was an absolute dead speech. And this is not the Donald Trump of 2016. Don't fool yourself. And as more and more folks realize that, he doesn't have the energy, he doesn't have the fastball. He basically is droning on for 90 minutes on his long-form speeches about his legal battles as opposed to talking about the future of this country. Ever see a soap opera? They get kind of boring. The only thing worse is the rerun of a soap opera, and that's what he's bringing, a lot of drama to the table.
Well, as you might have guessed, Trump was not amused or happy with Sununu's comments. So today, Trump unloaded. He took to Truth Social to say, Rhino Chris Sununu recently stated that I'm not running for president in 2024. Beating Trump is more important. No, he's not running for president because he's polling at 0 and has no chance of winning. The people of New Hampshire have gotten wise to Chris Sununu, and they no longer like or respect him. I never liked him, but always did whatever he asked for the state because I wanted to help New Hampshire, and I did. And lastly, today the New York Times and Siena College released a 2024 Republican presidential primary hypothetical poll. And the results, at least today, Trump is clobbering DeSantis by 39 points and also coming in first of all the Republican wannabes with a whopping 54%. In second is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at 15%. Tied for third place with 3% each are former Vice President Mike Pence, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and former South Carolina Governor and former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley. And tied for fourth place with 2% each are entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And let me repeat, polls are the snapshot of the moment. A lot can happen. The Messenger national political reporter Marc Caputo joins me. Nice to see you, Marc. And there's obviously a big bench of Republicans running for president. We see it every day. I think there are 13 or 14 of them. A lot can happen. Any one of us can get hit by a car. So if President Biden, for whatever reason, decides not to run, what's the bench for the Democrats?
Well, I would think the bench usually is your VP or former VP, except for, 1972? Democrats have always nominated a sitting VP or a former VP. And considering President Biden chose Kamala Harris as a running mate because the party was having a racial reckoning and realized that Black women were their base and their most loyal voters, it would be a real interesting thing to see the Democrats not nominate, for the first time in decades, a sitting VP who also happens to be a Black woman who represents the most loyal voters in the Democratic Party. But as you've just shown me that long list of candidates running in the Republican primary, just because something seems to make sense doesn't mean that everyone's going to heed it. And sometimes it means everyone's going to wind up running anyway. And it looks like the prisoner's dilemma, where something that seems to be kind of good for me, but is bad for everyone else, I'm going to do. And so that's what you have in the Republican primary, where right now everyone seems to be dividing up the not Trump vote, which basically helps ensure that Donald Trump is probably going to be the nominee again. And therefore it looks a lot like 2016 all over again.
Here's what I don't understand for the Democratic Party is that unless something has happened since in 4 years, the Democratic Party, when they voted for, when Vice President Kamala Harris was running for president, she got almost nothing, no support from her party. So unless like something like now all of a sudden they'd fall in love with her as vice president and she would get the support, I don't, who knows? But she certainly was not popular with the Democratic voters 4 years ago.
Certainly, at that time, though, she wasn't a vice president, and now she is. I do think, barring, and not to be too morbid about it, health concerns or mortality issues, preventing Joe Biden from being the nominee, he's going to be the nominee again. And yeah, you talked about polls are snapshots in time. Right now, most of the polls indicate, not all, but most of them indicate that the sitting president is probably going to beat the former president, just as he did in 2020. Joe Biden, after all, did win then. So for Biden,
what about the fact that a lot, I mean, absent some horrible national security problem, is that the economy usually is what drives a lot of people to vote for a particular one. President Biden's numbers today are terrible for the economy.
Oh, yeah.
Look terrible.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. Joe Biden's approval ratings are not anything that anyone would envy. But as Biden has frequently said, judge me by the alternative, not the almighty. And that has been sort of his trump card, pun intended, in this case. But hey, as you pointed out, it's early. Polls are snapshots in time. Who knows what's going to happen? Right now, things look pretty terrible in regards to President Biden's approval ratings, his favorability ratings. A lot of people still aren't feeling the benefits of the economy improving because they are paying more now for food than they were, say, 3 years ago. Presumably that will change. Now, whether that goes up and down, we'll have to see. But this is the kind of state of play that we're looking at for the upcoming presidential race, which is, it looks like for the first time since the late 1800s, we're going to get a rematch between a former president against the sitting president who beat him the first go around.
Marc Caputo, thank you. It's going to be interesting. Lots can happen in the next 15 months or so. Thank you.
Oh, indeed. Thanks.